Hello everybody, it's Jackson Fulcher here, and it's that time of the year where I present to you my favorite films of the year. Now, this list is going to be a top 15 best of the year list, if you could tell by the title, because I noticed looking back on all the movies I saw this year, I gave a lot of movies like great reviews, like positive A pluses and A's, that it was very hard to just whittle it down to just a top 10 and then just have a few honorable mentions. I had to extend it by a little bit, not a top 20, so I compromised and made it a top 15. Now, this is going to apply to my worst list as well, because for every great movie I saw, there was an awful, atrocious movie to counter that, so a top 15 best and a top 15 worst for 2016 just seemed appropriate. But first, it only makes sense that we start off with the good and end it off bad. So today we have the best list of 2016 for me. Now, I just wanted to warn you real quick, there are some movies that I haven't been able to see, like Silence, Patriots Day, A Monster Calls. Not being able to see those movies honestly hurts me a lot, trust me. But since they're being really awkward with their release dates for whatever reason, I'm just gonna do my list right now for the movies I've seen because I think my list is good. So let's go over a few honorable mentions that I have before I go over the actual top 15. So starting it off, Kung Fu Panda 3, 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, Jason Bourne, 10 Cloverfield Lane, Ouija Origin of Evil, Swiss Army Man, Nocturnal Animals, Star Trek Beyond, and Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. So with those honorable mentions being mentioned, they couldn't make the list because I saw 15 movies that I liked even more. So let's get started with number 15. The Conjuring 2 is a horror movie that is the rare exception where a horror movie sequel is actually better than the original. But that honestly really shouldn't have surprised me too much because it is directed by James Wan, who has been proving a lot lately that he is a master when it comes to this genre. He has done so much in the horror genre, and I think he's done his best here. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are great as Ed and Lorraine Warren, and I really love how in this movie they weren't just these really cool, awesome characters that stood in the background and didn't really have much of a character. In this movie, it felt like they actually grew as people by the end of the movie, make them more three-dimensional. I really appreciated that aspect. I really appreciated the family in this movie because I really enjoyed the first family in the first movie, and in this movie I think I like this family even more. I was able to connect with each of them. I felt bad for them when the paranormal ghost Bill was possessing the young girl played by Madison Wolfe, who in particular impressed me in this movie. And speaking of paranormal entities, Bill, the Nun, and the Crooked Man especially have been in my nightmares all summer. Don't Breathe is my favorite horror film of the entire year, despite having to watch it during some really horrible movie-going circumstances, like annoying audience members that like to make fun of everything. That was irritating. The point is, though, Don't Breathe is a movie that I loved. It had great suspense, great cinematography. The characters played by Jane Levy and Dylan Minnette, I think they were really good. Stephen Lang was, I think, fantastic as the blind man in this movie. And something I really liked about this movie is that no one in this movie is good. As soon as Stephen Lang shoots the expendable guy that's with Jane Levy and Dylan Minnette, you think, oh no, he's the bad guy, and you start rooting for Jane and Dylan. But then by the end of the movie, I started thinking, wait a minute, these two, they're kind of bad too because they broke into this guy's house. So you start to think, like, these two are bad, but Stephen Lang is also bad. There's no real good guy in this movie, but you're rooting for the bad people that just aren't as bad as this person. In a way, it's a very interesting character study, and I really appreciated that about this movie. Cinque Street. Who would have thought a movie about a very simple premise would turn out to be one of the best of the year? And it is a very simple premise. A young boy who's in school wants to impress this girl, so he starts a band with a couple of his friends. That's pretty much it, but the movie feels so much more than that. This movie was a lot of fun. It made me feel a lot of feelings for these characters that are all really unique and relatable in some ways. Even a bully character, once they kind of delve more into this character, you start to realize, oh, you're not really that much of a bad guy, you just have your own circumstances going on. The romance between the protagonist and the love interest wasn't a horrible teen romance that was sappy and generic and blah. It was actually really sweet and unique. And the music in this movie, oh my god, it was awesome. Drive It Like You Stole It. It was one of my favorite songs of this whole year. Kubo in the two strings, like my buddy Nate from Stupid Beagle Reviews has said, is pretty much the closest we're ever gonna get to a Legend of Zelda movie. I honestly feel so bad that this movie didn't get enough attention that it really deserved back when it was released. I feel like it got buried by every other movie out, and that's really unfair because Kubo in the two strings was so incredible. You have these really great characters you're following. Art Parkinson playing Kubo, Charlize Theron playing Monkey, and Matthew McConaughey as Beetle. These three interacting with each other. I just wanted to see more movies of them. I wanted to see more adventures that they go on. I wanted to just see more of them on screen together because they all work so well. And even though it is a stop-motion movie, the action scenes turn out to be some of the best of the entire year, and it made me just think, how did you do that? This is just slightly moving a limb and taking a picture, then moving another limb and taking a picture. How did you create such a fantastic action scene out of that? Deepwater Horizon has come out at a very appropriate time. It hasn't been too long since the actual oil rig explosion, but it hasn't been too soon since then as well. I actually remember hearing about the Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosion back when I was a kid, so when I was watching this movie I was like, oh my gosh, this is what was actually happening? Jesus, man! And Peter Berg is such an underrated director. This year, he did Patriots Day 2. I didn't see that, but I'm hearing great things. But in this movie in particular, he was able to make me feel like I was with Mark Wahlberg and Kurt Russell trying to survive this oil rig that is just doomed, with all this metal clashing against each other and explosions going on. By the way, the sound design, cinematography, technical aspects in general were so incredible, worth the price of admission alone, but what made it even better were the characters that you had to follow. This movie had a great hour leading up to it. It gave you the necessary information you needed to get behind these characters, so when the events do happen, when they're all pretty much doomed, you do care about what's happening and you do feel emotional for them. I was clenched in my seat a lot during Deepwater Horizon because of how much suspense I was in. Arrival is a very thought-provoking science fiction movie, and a lot of movies with aliens coming to Earth end up with explosions, laser cannons firing down at people, but this movie, there's only really one explosion that happens, and it's caused by humans. The aliens had nothing to do with it. This is a very dialogue-driven movie. It's a movie about people connecting with each other, communication, putting aside their differences to achieve a common goal, and I think that's a really important message, and I really like how they executed that in this movie. The cast was all good. Forrest Whitaker, Jeremy Renner, and Amy Adams especially was fantastic in this film. It might be her best performance in my opinion. And the first two acts of this movie, I thought they were good. When the third act kicks in, I was like, okay, I'm really loving this movie now. The Jungle Book is one of the only Disney remakes that I was looking forward to upon its release, because the original cartoon Jungle Book, I was like, yeah, that's a fun Disney movie, but it isn't amazing or spectacular. I had a couple flaws with it. It was the only cartoon that seemed like Disney could actually improve upon with a remake, and they most certainly did that. Jon Favreau did a fantastic job remaking The Jungle Book because he pretty much fixed any flaw that I had with the original. The story seemed so much better, the characters seemed better. Shere Khan especially was utilized way better in this movie than in the original, and Neil Setti, I hope he has a great future as an actor because he proves in this movie that he can do some good, especially since he's acting with nothing, which is then transformed into some of the best visual effects effects you will ever see. And everything in this movie is a visual effect, except for Neil Seddy. Maybe they had some ground for him to walk on, but this entire movie was filmed in a soundstage with blue screens everywhere. The bear wasn't real, the tiger wasn't real, the panther was not real, the Gigantopithecus was not real. All visual effects. Utopia, when I first saw the trailers for this movie, I thought, okay, it's a city filled with animals that are talking and they go on adventures. Okay, this seems kind of fun. And I walked out really amazed by the originality of this screenplay, because this is a movie that's more than just talking animals. It's also kind of a metaphor for our society and drug use, sexism, racism. It's the perfect kind of family film because the kids will be entertained by the bright colors, the action scenes, and the characters like Nick Wilde and Judy Hopps, who are definitely very entertaining. Jason Bateman and Jennifer Goodwin do fantastic jobs voicing these characters. One of the best duos of the entire year. But then you have the adults who are watching this movie that are also being entertained by it, but they can also pick up on some of the themes going on with the movie and can recognize the layers that this movie has. Moana is a movie that a lot of people complained about because it felt too similar to other Disney movies, and though I can kind of see where they're coming from while I was watching the movie, I felt like they created a new experience using some familiar beats that we'd seen before. It's similar to my defense with Star Wars The Force Awakens. Sure, it retreaded A New Hope's plot, but how I felt with that movie was that it created a brand new experience that made it feel brand new to me. Same thing with Moana. They had some similar beats, and they had a pretty simple message, but through their execution, what they did do new with these similar beats, it felt completely new to me. It honestly felt like a brand fresh new experience that I enjoyed watching immensely. This is some of the most beautiful animation I've seen this whole year. The action scenes were a lot of fun to watch. The designs, the colors were great. Moana as a character was fantastic. Auli Cravalho, I want to see more of her in the future, similar to Neil Seddy, because she did a fantastic job in this movie. And Dwayne Johnson as Maui was perfect. Very funny character, who also had some layers himself, and these two especially bounced off each other very well. Another duo this year that were fantastic together. Hell or High Water, when I saw the trailers for it, it seemed like an Oscar bait movie that I was going to be bored by, but when I walked out of the movie, I was not bored at all. In fact, it was the total opposite. This is a movie that people could get bored by if handled wrong, but the screenwriter of this movie, I think, created a fantastic script with some great dialogue, and he was able to write some fantastic characters, and then the performances were able to bring these characters to life and have you be invested with them. Chris Pine and Ben Foster, this movie is a career best for both of them. This is the best I've seen from both of them in this film. Their characters were so interesting. They weren't just bad people. They actually were doing some bad things for some legitimate reasons that you can't help but understand. Then you have great supporting characters from Gil Birmingham and Jeff Bridges, who also bounced off each other very well. There are some moments where I actually thought these two were stealing the show from Ben Foster and Chris Pine. The cast was so strong here. The direction and especially the writing in this movie was phenomenal. The Nice Guys was my favorite comedy of the entire summer. I laughed so hard at this movie, and a lot of it has to do with Shane Black as a writer. If you know Shane Black, you know he wrote Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which is another excellent comedy from him. And these two movies are kind of similar, but they stand out on their own. The Nice Guys was just so witty. It had so many funny jokes told by Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe, who are my favorite duo of the entire year. But while the movie is very funny, it also has a very interesting mystery for us to follow. I was actually hooked with the mystery while also being entertained by the comedic elements of Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. And even the action scenes for a comedy were very, very well done. I had so much fun with The Nice Guys. I would love to see more of these two characters, Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe, but unfortunately the movie did not do well at the box office, which is kind of a bummer because I would definitely want to see more. Deadpool did everything right for a Deadpool fan who has been waiting for a good Deadpool movie for how long now? Since X-Men Origins Wolverine came out? In X-Men Origins Wolverine, they ruined Deadpool, like completely, but Ryan Reynolds never stopped fighting for this character, and when that test footage was leaked and people responded to it well, they eventually made this movie. Thank God for whoever leaked the test footage. It was probably Tim Miller or Ryan Reynolds, one of the two, but thank goodness for them, because we finally got this movie, and it's everything a Deadpool fan would want. The character of Deadpool was perfect in this movie. Ryan Reynolds was fantastic as Deadpool, finally proving why he was chosen to play this character. He was born to play Deadpool. I honestly can't see anyone else playing this guy. It just seems so perfect. This movie also has some great action, and this is Tim Miller, the director's first movie. This is Tim Miller's first movie, and he directed it so fantastically. I'm honestly so sad that he won't be coming back to Deadpool 2, but he did a fantastic job here. And not only is this a really good action movie and comedy, but it's also a really sweet romance movie as well. This is pretty much the total package for a movie. Captain America Civil War is my favorite comic book film of the entire year. It was also the first movie I saw for the summer season, and I gave it an A+, which kinda gave me a warning that no other movie this summer would kinda stand up to Civil War, and that turned out to be true. Well, with the exception of The Nice Guys, but still, Captain America Civil War actually accomplished what Batman v Superman was trying to do earlier this year. But where Captain America Civil War succeeded was that they built up to it. Ever since 2008, with the release of Iron Man, they've been building up to this movie. We've seen the events happening, we've met new characters, we've seen these characters interact with each other, and now this movie happens and we see their mindsets conflicting with other mindsets of the team. When these characters all get to the airport scene and they're all fighting each other, you really feel the emotions running through them. You're probably all entertained by it because it's an action scene with all your favorite superheroes, but then you start thinking, they're friends, they're a team, and they're fighting each other, no! And why do you feel that? Why do you feel these emotions for these comic book characters? Because you've grown up with them for 8 years. Tony Stark felt completely different in this movie. Robert Downey Jr. is still great as Tony Stark, but you can't deny that this felt much different than the normal Tony Stark that we know, and I love that. They actually showed that these characters, though we've known them for a long time, they can still grow as people. They can still change. And also, this movie has the most underrated villain of the whole year. I've heard so many people complain, oh, he wasn't in the movie a whole lot, he's just another forgettable Marvel villain. But think for a second. Not only did Daniel Bruce do a good job playing him, but his backstory was tragic. And if you think about it, he actually accomplished what he was planning on doing. He wanted to tear the Avengers apart. He wanted Iron Man and Cap to fight. Look what happened. Hacksaw Ridge is a movie that riveted me to no end, and a lot of this is due to Mel Gibson's direction. Say whatever you want about him as a person. Sure, he's a nut job, but as a director, you can't deny he's fantastic at it, and him in this movie as the director, perfect. He perfectly captured a lot of the feelings you get in war, confusion, fear. When you're with Desmond Doss and he has no weapon to protect himself and you see the bullets flying everywhere, you see people dying left and right, you feel so scared for him. And Desmond Doss could have been utilized as just a propaganda speaking character, but they utilized him very well here. You actually do care about him despite what his morals are, because you can understand where he's coming from. He's not trying to change anyone's mind, he's just saying what he believes, and he's just gonna do that. Overall, Hacksaw Ridge was a fantastic war film, one of the best I've ever seen. It was so riveting, so well acted, and it might have been my favorite film of this year if it weren't for this film. My number one is... La La Land is the movie that I'm going to remember the most this year, because this movie has the best acting, best screenwriting, best direction, best cinematography, best soundtrack of the entire year. Literally everything about this movie works. And Damien Chazelle, this is just another movie to prove that he has a long future ahead of him, because he had Whiplash 2 years ago, which blew everyone away, myself included, and now this movie, which continues to blow me away. After watching the opening sequence of this movie, I knew I'm gonna love the remainder of this film, and I did. Every second of this movie, every shot, every frame, I was in love with this movie. The music honestly moved me to the point where I had tears swelling up in my eyes. I didn't actually cry, but I wanted to, because the music and the actual story itself was so fantastic. And this isn't like a typical romance movie. It actually goes places that I didn't really expect it to go. And Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone, their chemistry is so natural. They're so great with each other. They're really funny together too. They dance really well, and they sing really well. Overall, La La Land is one of the most magical experiences I've had for the entire year, and I cannot deny that La La Land is the best film I've seen of 2016. So guys, those were my top 15 best films of 2016. What were your favorite films of this year? Leave it in the comments below, and tomorrow I'm gonna have my top 15 worst. Look forward to that, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.